Annmarie, widely expected. Are you surprised that it's 50 million barrels and not more?
Well, my reporting yesterday was that it was going to be north of 35 million barrels. So I am quite surprised that it is 50 million barrels. In terms of what I know about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, I believe this is the biggest ever. 2011, when President Barack Obama tapped it, when disruptions in Libya were happening, that was 30 million. Katrina with Bush, I believe that was somewhat in the tune of 11 million. 50 million barrels is a lot for the United States to have for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And not only that, they were able to get other consumers on board. Now, I think the other countries are going to be a little bit more modest when you look at 50 million barrels coming from Washington, but it sends quite a big message to OPEC Plus in the Gulf.
Meanwhile, we are seeing West Texas Intermediate come down to new intraday lows. It's now down 1.8%. I think it's notable to see that as people parse through the details of just the scope of how much the U.S. plans to release, we are seeing those losses extended now $75.38 a barrel. Really interesting, Annmarie, to see the U.S. response to this. Are we expecting a commensurate release from the other nations? Do we have a sense of what those conversations have been like over the past few weeks?
Yes, we certainly are expecting, and reporting overnight from Indian officials is that they will be, and they were the first ones to announce, they're going to be out with a few million barrels, as well as Japan will likely follow suit. China, a little bit of an interesting point. They already announced, following that meeting with President Biden and Xi Jinping, that they were looking into tapping their reserves. They had done so as well in September. They have been dealing with a volatile energy situation, energy crunch in China. So they're not likely coordinating on the same exact day, but you can see where the trend is going with these massive consumers who are dealing with higher prices.
Annmarie, is this like China, where it's a bipartisan effort? I mean, is there a Republican response to a Democratic release of the petroleum reserve? What's the inside debate here?
Yeah, lawmakers sent a letter to the White House yesterday, Republican lawmakers, led by Representative Stephanie Bice, as well as Representative Cheney and a number of others, saying, why are we tapping the Strategic Petroleum Reserve when we should be incentivizing our fossil fuel companies in America to just produce more? Of course, this is going to be a political debate. We have seen the Biden administration want to move alongside the energy transition. But we also have seen the Gulf of Mexico, the latest new releases, one of the biggest in terms of drilling releases we've seen. So you are seeing a little bit of a political debate in Congress. You also have many on the left saying we should do an export ban instead of tapping the SPR. But they came out with an SPR. I will say with prices lower, a lot of this was baked in. I was even shocked at how much the U.S. was able to talk down prices, but 50 million and prices moving lower shows that they mean business and that it's even more than the market was expecting.
Well, you have the price of a barrel of oil futures moving lower, but at the same time, the average cost of a gallon of gasoline in the U.S. has held steady at around $3.70 across the country. And actually, when you go down further into the White House's press release, they talk about anti-competitive practices potentially in the energy sector, and maybe that they are, coalescing to keep American consumers from benefiting when oil prices fall. Talk about that dynamic a little bit.
Well, they sent a letter to the FTC about price gouging. Now, we've seen administration after administration do this. It rarely wields any results immediately. This is about long-term, looking at the data for how this happens. But the administration is looking into that. But it's not going to be immediate. You're not going to immediately hit the price of WTI and Brent, and then it's going to fall to the gasoline prices. But this will start to temper the gasoline prices at the pump, when I think we're just a little bit under AAA's $3.50 for a gallon of gasoline. That will likely start to temper. Also, the timing of this I find incredibly interesting, right? This is the biggest driving season. We have Thanksgiving. We have Christmas coming up. This is when Americans are out in their cars. This is when Americans are using more and more energy. And this is when the administration is deciding to make a point. The president's going to talk about that and rising inflation later this afternoon.